Before Islam, the Arabian Peninsula was a very different world. A world shaped by desert, survival, tribal loyalty, and belief in many gods. To understand how revolutionary Islam was, we first need to understand what life in Arabia looked like before it. Arabia was mostly desert. Water was scarce, temperatures were extreme, and survival was never guaranteed. Because of this environment, people adapted in two main ways. Some became nomads, known as Bedouins. They moved constantly with their camels, goats, and sheep, living in tents and following seasonal routes in search of water and grazing land. Others settled in towns and cities like Mecca, Yathrib, Taif, and Najran. There was no central government in Arabia at the time. Instead, society was built entirely around tribes. Your tribe was your identity, your protection, and your justice system. If someone harmed you, your tribe was expected to take revenge. If you were weak or without a tribe, you had no protection at all. Honor mattered more than law. Loyalty to the tribe came before morality, religion, or fairness. This system created constant conflict, and tribal wars could last for decades over something as small as an insult or a stolen camel. Daily life depended on where you lived. Nomadic tribes survived through herding and raiding rival tribes. Raiding was not considered immoral, it was seen as a normal way of life. In settled areas, trade was the backbone of the economy. Mecca became especially wealthy because it sat along major trade routes connecting Yemen, Syria, Persia, and the Byzantine world. Caravans carried spices, leather, incense, textiles, and precious metals. Markets were also social and cultural centers, where people traded goods, made alliances, and competed in poetry. Religion in pre-Islamic Arabia was mostly polytheistic. People believed in many gods, spirits, and supernatural forces tied to nature and tribal identity. Each tribe had its own deities, and idols were believed to bring protection, rain, or victory in war. The Kaaba already existed in Mecca, but instead of being a monotheistic center, it housed more than 300 idols. Among the most famous were Hubal and the goddesses Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Not everyone was polytheistic. There were Jewish and Christian communities, and a small number of people called Hanifs who believed in one God, but did not follow an organized religion. Morality in pre-Islamic Arabia was based on honor, not universal ethics. If something benefited the tribe, it was usually acceptable. The common practices included heavy drinking, gambling, slavery, and endless cycles of revenge killings. There were no real limits on violence unless a temporary truce or sacred month was declared. The treatment of women varied from tribe to tribe. Some women owned property, ran businesses, and played important social roles. But many women had very few rights. Forced marriages were common. Women could be inherited as property. Most had no right to inheritance themselves. In many cases, women were treated as symbols of honor rather than individuals. One of the darkest practices in parts of pre-Islamic Arabia was female infanticide. In some tribes, newborn girls were buried alive. This did not happen everywhere, but it did happen. The reasons included fear of poverty, fear of shame, and fear that daughters would be captured during tribal warfare. Some fathers believed killing their daughters was better than raising them in a harsh world. This practice later became one of the clearest examples of what Islam condemned as moral ignorance. The Quran directly criticizes this, asking for what sin the girl was killed. Poetry was one of the most important parts of Arabian culture. Poets were not just entertainers. They were historians, spokespeople, and political weapons. Poetry preserved tribal history, praised victories, mocked enemies, and defended honor. A powerful poet could raise the status of an entire tribe. The most famous poems, known as the Mu'allaqat, were celebrated across Arabia. War was constant. There was no standing army, only tribal fighters. Wars could start suddenly and continue for generations. Despite all this, pre-Islamic Arabia was not a completely uncivilized society. It had rich traditions, strong social bonds, and a deep respect for generosity and courage. But it was also a world built on inequality, tribal dominance, and fear. A world without a shared moral law. A world where survival often mattered more than justice. Understanding this society helps explain why Islam's message was so powerful. It challenged tribal loyalty with faith-based unity. It replaced idols with monotheism. And it introduced moral accountability where there had been none. This was the world before Islam. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching,